Hello, and welcome to IS 380 Song and Poetry. I'm Dr. Laura Hanson from the Department of Theater and Dance, and I, along with Dr. Mark Chapman from the Department of Music, will be your guides through this exploration of the relationship between music and text in the American musical. Musical theater is probably one of the most collaborative of the performing arts. In order to create it, you need a composer, a lyricist, and a book writer. And we'll get to that term book writer in a moment. In order to produce it, you also have to add a director, a choreographer, a music director, designers. So a lot of people collaborate in order to bring a musical to the stage. It's also a uniquely American genre. It was developed out of many influences from around the world, including European operetta, British ballad opera, the ethnic humor of vaudeville, and the rhythms of jazz and ragtime developed by the African American community in New York at the turn of the 20th century. Another element of collaboration is the audience. The audience that goes to a musical has a certain understanding that people are going to burst into song and dance, and we accept that as part of our experience of going to see a musical. In these introductory lectures, Dr. Chapman and I will be laying the foundation for your studies over the next 3 weeks. Dr. Chapman will talk about musical elements, and I will discuss the textual elements today. Textual elements include lyrics and the book of the musical. Now, I think we all know what lyrics are. They're the song's words. But what is the book of a musical? It isn't just the dialogue between the songs. It's much more comprehensive than that. According to composer-lyricist Stephen Sondheim, books are what musicals are all about. Okay? But the book is probably the least understood and least appreciated of all the elements. It's the first one to be blamed when a musical doesn't work, and the last element to get credit when a musical is a hit. We tend to think of musicals in terms of who wrote the songs. In an ideal situation, the book should be the starting point. The book is the blueprint of the musical, and it lays out the theme, the plot, where the songs will go, the style of the show, who the characters are, and how they will speak. Now, in the early days of American musical theater, or musical comedy as it was called then, the 19-teens and 20s, the books were pretty flimsy. They were just created around the songs, and songs, dances, or even comedy routines from vaudeville were inserted into shows merely for their entertainment value, whether they had anything to do with the plot or not. But in a more mature, what I call integrated musical, such as Oklahoma, which we'll be studying, the other elements should all develop out of the original blueprint, the book. Now, writing the book of a musical is an art unto itself. You can't just take a regular straight play and add songs and turn it into a musical. The book of a musical has to be about economy, because so much of the story is going to be told through music, song, and dance. Now, while the book writer is very often different from the composer and lyricist, a third collaborator, sometimes the lyricist is also the book writer, as was the case with Oscar Hammerstein, who wrote Oklahoma. He did both. He wrote the original book, the blueprint, as well as the lyrics to the songs. And this is a unique and good situation when the same person is writing both, because that same person can make a seamless blend from the prose of the dialogue into the poetry of the lyrics, a seamless bridge. Those in the business refer to this as the gozinta, and that's just G-O-Z-I-N-T-A, a slang word, and it just means the scene that how it goes into the song. You will read more about the art of book writing in today's article by Peter Stone. But what I'd like for you to do now is pause the lecture and take a look. I've put a link up on Blackboard for you to watch right now. It's called If I Loved You, from the musical Carousel, or as it's more famously known in the business as the bench scene. Two characters meet on a bench. And it's an extended sequence of spoken dialogue, sung dialogue, musical underscoring to spoken dialogue, and eventually song. And it has had a great influence on later writers of musical theater. So go ahead now and please watch The Bench Scene or If I Loved You from Carousel. Oscar Hammerstein, who wrote that scene, was a firm believer in the fact that people don't just fall in love in an instant. So he often wrote what he called the conditional love song. People, if I loved you, or people will say we're in love, so that people have more of a chance to actually fall in love than they do in an instant at first sight. How are songs used within a musical? How is it decided? Well, if you refer to a handout I've posted for you on Blackboard, it's here called Uses of a Song Within a Musical. And we'll go over this just briefly because you have the handout. I would suggest that you download this handout and keep it with you because you will need it throughout the semester as you look at some of the songs that we've posted on Blackboard. An entire scene can be played out in song, as you've just seen with the bench scene. Songs can also be used to introduce a character, what they're thinking, what they're feeling at a particular moment. A soliloquy is a song like an interior monologue for a character who's wrestling with some sort of problem within his or her own mind. For example, if Hamlet was a musical, the to be or not to be soliloquy would certainly be a song. Numbers can tell an audience what kind of show they're going to see. A good opening number will tell the audience what to expect. For example, Comedy Tonight from A Funny Thing on the Way to the Forum. That song actually saved that show because at first the audience wasn't sure what they were going to see until that song was put in right at the beginning and told the audience, this is a farce, this is a slapstick comedy, so sit back and enjoy yourself. It can also express the theme of a show. For example, the song Tradition from Fiddler on the Roof tells the audience right up front what the theme of the show is all about. It can also introduce all the characters and all the situations that you need to know in order to jump into the plot. For example, if any of you have seen or even been in high school and Into the Woods, the opening number goes on for more than 10 minutes, but it introduces all the characters, all their desires, all their goals, and launches you into the rest of the act. A musical may contain many different kinds of songs. It may have ballads, love songs, comic songs, list songs, patter songs, character songs, pastiche, which is a sort of a blending of different styles of music. We'll see that a lot in Showboat, which we'll look at during the next 3 weeks. You can have duets, trios, quartets, quintets. The wonderful thing about musicals is that with music, all the characters can talk at once, something you cannot do with spoken dialogue. You can also have something called the 11 o'clock number, and this refers to the big showstopper right before the end of the show. For example, the song Oklahoma in the musical of that name. This term comes from the fact that Broadway musicals used to start at 8:30 rather than 8 o'clock, and the big number right before the end of the show usually occurred right around 11 o'clock. So as you listen to the songs and view the musicals over the next 3 weeks, think about the uses of the song. Refer to your handout. Why are they there? In a fully integrated musical, the songs should be there for a good reason. They shouldn't just be stuck in for entertainment value and not just as filler. Right? Composer-lyricist Frank Lesser, who wrote the musical Guys and Dolls, he said a character sings when their emotions gotten to a point where ordinary spoken language is no longer sufficient and they have to launch into song. So check that out when you're looking at the musicals over the course of the semester and think about it. That will be included in some of the questions you have in your daily journal entries. Now we'll talk about theater lyrics, and you have a wonderful article to read today by composer-lyricist Stephen Sondheim. In addition to writing music for his own musicals, he also writes the lyrics, which makes that collaboration that much easier when you're doing both. He is probably considered one of the best lyricists that the American musical has ever produced. He emphasizes in his article A few things that are very important to remember about lyrics. Lyrics have to be economical. It's like poetry. In a regular 32-bar song, you may only have 60 or 80 words. So the word choice is extremely important. Also, lyrics exist in time. They're not meant to be read, they're meant to be heard with the music. So the audience generally has only one chance to hear them as they go by. Therefore, they have to be clear and understandable, and use a vocabulary that's appropriate for the character that is singing. Most importantly, they have to go with the music. They have to land on the music where the beats of the music are, should line up with where the stresses and the accents of the words are. Now, people often wonder which comes first, the music or the lyrics. Well, it depends on the collaborators, and sometimes it changes with the same composer. For example, Richard Rodgers, who had a whole career before he started working with Oscar Hammerstein, he worked with a lyricist named Lawrence Hart for many, many years, starting from the teens, 19-teens, up until 1940. With Hart, Rodgers would write the music first, and then Lawrence Hart would write the lyrics to match the music. When Rodgers started working with Hammerstein, however, they reversed the style of their collaboration. Hammerstein would write the lyrics first, and then Rodgers would set them to music. As you listen to the musicals throughout this month, I would like you to refer to the handout I've given you again in today's folder on Blackboard. It's called Lyric Elements, and you will need these for some of your assignments, so again I would suggest that you download it and keep it on your computer. Let me just go through some of these very quickly. You can study the handout a little more in depth because I've given an explanation, and I've also given you some songs on there as examples. If you would like to check those out, you can find many of these on YouTube. Character. Does it express the character? Does it express the character's emotions or point of view? Describe the character. Lyrics have to be clear and singable, okay? As we said, they only go by once. You've got to be able to understand them the first time around. Do they fit with the music? Do the accents of the words, the stresses of the words, fit with the beats of the music? Do they appropriately express the emotions of the characters? Subtext. This is something that means something that's not stated outright, something that's implied. Sondheim says it gives his actors something to act. And sometimes the lyrics may say something that's different from what the character is really feeling, or they're trying to convince themselves or someone else of something. And sometimes the music that accompanies it can give you a subtle hint because it doesn't quite go with what the character is singing. Humor, of course, verbal wit, puns, double entendres are very popular in lyrics of, for example, Cole Porter. Punctuation. If you look at the lyrics written out, the punctuation should make sense to where the breaks in the lines are and the breaks in the music. There's also something related to punctuation called enjambment, and you can see that spelled out on your lyric handout. And this means that the sense of the line doesn't end at the end of the line and has to be carried on to the next line in order for you to get the full sense. There's a song in Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum that's called I'm Calm. And the character sings, I'm calm, I'm cool, a gibbering fool. And you think, wait, that doesn't make sense. He just said he's calm and cool. But you have to read on to the next line. I'm calm, I'm cool, a gibbering fool is something I never become. So in order to get the full sense of the humor, you have to continue on to the next line. I think everyone knows what alliteration is. It's when the words start with the same consonant sound. You'll find a song in Pal Joey called Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered. And that sort of helps the line become more memorable and moves the line along and helps speed it up. Assonance is the same vowel sound in subsequent words. For example, wood and book. Language style is important. As Sondheim says, the vocabulary has to be appropriate to the character singing it. Okay, so whether they're educated, uneducated, sophisticated, whether English is not their first language, you have to have a vocabulary that's appropriate. You can see some really good examples of this in the musical Carousel and Oklahoma, where the words were written by Oscar Hammerstein, who came from a very sophisticated theatrical Jewish family in New York, but he's writing about people in the territory of Oklahoma at the turn of the century, or people in a very small town in New England. There's a song in Carousel called A Real Nice Clam Bake, and they're singing about, this was a real nice clam bake. We're mighty glad we came. So the use of colloquialisms or slang that is appropriate to the characters. Conversational lyrics, too. You saw a little bit of that in that bench scene from Carousel, where the lyrics are so natural that they could be spoken dialogue as opposed to sung dialogue. Imagery and metaphor is another thing, too. Sometimes an entire lyric will revolve around one image or metaphor, a central unifying theme. And I believe Sondheim talks about that in your lyric reading for today. Rhyme. Now, rhyme is very important in a lyric, obviously. Pay special attention to the use of rhyme or the lack of it. More complex and multi-syllable rhymes imply, again, a certain sophistication, intelligence, and education in the character singing. Rhyme emphasizes the words. It's often at the end of a line, but not always. Sometimes there can be internal rhyme, which again helps speed the line along. You'll find this in Company in a song called The Ladies Who Lunch. Rhyme also makes the words more memorable, so you have to be sure that the words that rhyme are the ones that you want to be memorable. They should be the most important words, and not just little words like the or an. To finish up, and for you to see some of these lyric elements in action, I would like you to look at the other video that I have posted. This is a song called You Gotta Get a Gimmick from the musical Gypsy, which is considered one of the best examples of the golden age of American musicals. The golden age started in the 40s, went on into the 50s to the early 60s, with many, many Broadway musicals that are now, well known and beloved in this country. This show, Gypsy, also has one of the best scores in the American musical theater. The songs were composed by a man named Julie Stein, and the lyrics are by Stephen Sondheim. Notice there goes into, in this number, how the scene leads into the song. So look at the song, check your lyric elements handout, and see how many of the elements you can discover. There's quite a few of them in that song. And then move on to your other assignments for today. So enjoy, work hard, and have a good time together as we explore the American musical theater.